So it's not the best day here in LA right now, especially in terms of LA weather. It's a bit of overcast, it might rain today, But basically, I wanted to do this video because I've gotten actually a lot of different questions on this subject. And that is, do you have any tips for drivers who are living currently in Boston? Obviously, I grew up in Massachusetts and drove for a while in Boston for both Lyft and Uber. Now I'm in, obviously, LA. And I've been asked for a lot of different suggestions specifically for the Boston area. Now, I will say, in this video, I'm going to give you 10 tips. However, a lot of these tips can be translated over to a lot of other cities. So I will say that if you're watching this video being like, oh, you know what, I'm not from Boston, I don't live in Boston, this probably wouldn't apply to me. A lot of these tips will translate over to a lot of other cities, especially because I will say my driving experience really only exists in Boston and LA. So obviously this video, like I said, is mainly for the Boston people, but I will say that a lot of these tips translate over to a lot of different cities. So let's begin. Number 1, do hourly guarantees. Now with Lyft specifically, they always offer hourly guarantees, and Uber as well. I don't know why this doesn't exist in LA, there's nothing like this, but in Boston, they'll always email me saying, or when I was in Boston, they always email me saying, hey, you know what, this week, if you drive from 7 to 9 a.m. and 5 to 7 p.m., we'll guarantee you $25 or $30 minimum guaranteed an hour. And a lot of times, I actually didn't hit that. A lot of times, I'd only make, $10 or $15 an hour because a lot of other drivers would drive. And as a result, I get one ride in, which is kind of the quota that they wanted. I get one quick ride in, sit in my car, I just read a book because it was so busy. I barely got any other rides, really. And I just get paid a ton. So it was awesome. So I'm telling you, compared to other cities, I've heard they don't have this. Boston has awesome hourly guarantees for Lyft. And even Uber has a lot of interesting bonuses too that don't really exist in a lot of other cities. So definitely take full advantage of all of those. Number 2, take advantage of the tolls. Now in Boston, compared to other cities, obviously you have a lot of tolls, especially when you're driving throughout the city and be going on the Mass Pike a lot, getting off it. You may have to be spending that $1.50 or however much it's gonna be, obviously I have no idea how much it is now, but that $1.50 or whatever it is a lot of times. Now the cool thing about this, so this is something a lot of drivers forget. Obviously when you drive, the passenger pays that, obviously it kind of is included in the fare, and then Lyft and Uber technically reimburses you for that toll. So remember, and essentially what's happening is you're paying something and then getting that exact money back. So a big thing I suggest to a lot of drivers is get like a credit card, get something with some type of deal, and try to take advantage of that deal. For example, for me, with the card that I had used, I would actually get card bonuses when I'd spend money with it. So essentially, if I'm spending, like say, $20, $30 a week in tolls, but then getting that $20, $30 back, and then I get bonuses from my credit card, I'm almost like getting free miles, or it's like getting free money, or whatever the case is. And this is a great thing that you can take full advantage of. Number 3, always check the events. In Boston, like a lot of other cities, there's always events going on, whether it's like a music event or whether it's like, some type of sporting event or whatever the case is. But the big thing that Boston has compared to a lot of other cities is so many colleges. So always check, because colleges are always having crazy events all the time, and make sure to read those Lyft and Uber newsletters that they always send you, just to make sure you can read through them and see all the awesome events that are going on. For example, I remember there's one, it was like a 3-day streak where I think it was like BC, BU, and like another school was having graduations. And this is on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So literally at like Tuesday at 1 p.m., which normally would be a very dead period of time, I think the surge rate was something like 3x or 4x. And I made so much money in those days because people are traveling, they're coming into Boston, they're going to their graduation to see, their son or daughter graduate. And the surge rates were through the roof. And that was an awesome time to drive, right? And normally, like I said, that would be a horrible time. So this is a great thing to take advantage of by looking at all the different events that are always going on. Number 4, understand the flow of college season. Now this is something that I very interestingly stumbled upon. And that is, and this probably makes a lot of sense, during college season when kids are going out, they're doing a bunch of different things and whatnot, there's actually so many more rides, the surge is way higher, and you're way more likely to make a ton more money. I found, for example, during the summer, I made way less money. So a big tip I give to a lot of drivers is be prepared for that just in general. Like if let's say you're driving, during the spring and making a ton of money because college kids are going out and Friday and Saturday nights are booming like crazy, keep in mind that when it's like May and June and starts approaching the summer, there may be a lot of less rides And especially during, like say like the Friday and Saturday nights. For example, I would drive a lot during Friday and Saturday nights during, the winter and during the spring. But when it hit the summer, I actually started driving less on Friday and Saturday nights and started driving more on like in the morning commutes and evening commutes, because I knew there should be a lot of more people there, but obviously college kids are really not around. So a lot of the periods of times that there would be a lot of traffic, there was a lot less traffic. So just a big tip that I'm going to give is just be prepared for the flow, of basically the ebb and flow of the way college season works and affects the Lyft and Uber surge rates. Number 6, the more miles you drive is the more money you're going to make. So in case you didn't know, let's say I have 2 different rides. Let's say ride A and B, and let's say they're both 10 minutes long. If ride A, I drive 3 miles for 10 minutes, and ride B, I drive 1 mile, but it's 10 minutes, the ride A is actually going to make me more money, even though in the same amount of time, I'm both driving 10 minutes. But in ride A, I'm driving 3 miles. And with Lyft and Uber, the way they pay you, the more miles you drive is the biggest factor of how much you can make above anything. So great example is, let's say you're in Boston, let's say you're bringing someone from, I don't know, let's say you're going from Brighton all the way to downtown Boston. Well, you have a couple different options. To give you 2, you can either take Store Drive, obviously, and kind of go that route, or you can go Commonwealth Ave and just hit all those lights. Now, a lot of times, especially when there's a lot of traffic, the routes are about similar in terms of how long they're going to take. Sometimes, obviously, they depend, but most of the time, those 2 routes can be pretty similar in time. However, I know if I take Store Drive as opposed to Commonwealth Avenue, depending on the time, I'm actually going to make more money. Now, again, this could get a bit ethical depending on how you look at it, in the sense that, yeah, you're purposely taking a route, even if it's going to be the same amount of time, that's going to be more expensive. But Lyft and Uber is so easy to take now. It's so cheap, and they're paying the riders a lot less. Again, this is very much so up to you. And in addition, I find in that specific case, Store Drive and the Mass Pike is usually faster than Commonwealth Avenue or some other route that you're hitting all these different lights, especially during the traffic period. Number 7, understand the way the airport works. Now, I have a couple different tips for basically when you're dropping and picking up people off at Logan. Now, this may change. I want to get that first and foremost. This may change. Obviously, this may have already changed, actually. I don't know. Now, in the past, the way it worked is that you could drop somebody off at the airport from both Lyft and Uber, but you could only pick up people at the airport with Lyft. Now, this is what's really interesting. Now, every driver knows that on that route, you have this toll that's $3.50 to go back into the city from Logan. Now, what Uber started doing, which is super cool, is that Uber started paying you. So, for example, if let's say I was going to drop somebody off at the airport, they would charge them the $3.50 toll because they knew I had to go and loop back around to go back in the city. So this is what I started doing. I started then taking Uber. I drop somebody off at the airport. I get that $3.50 bonus. I then turn on the Lyft app, pick somebody up with Lyft, and then drive them back. And Lyft obviously would reimburse me for that $3.50 toll. So essentially, that toll that Uber was paying that I was have to go back through was basically like a free $3.50, bonus essentially. And if I do 3 or 4 rides in a day, it's almost, like a $15 or $20 bonus just for bringing people to the airport, Another thing I'm going to suggest, and this is a big thing too, is remember that when it comes to with Lyft, when you go to pick somebody up at the airport, the GPS is not the best. So anytime I'd get a ride at the airport, the first thing I'd immediately do is call them. I'd call the person and be like, hey, this is Mark, your Lyft driver. I just want to, I'm curious, what terminal are you at? Simply because it's saying terminal B, but you could be at A, B, D or E, or whatever the case is, So obviously there's so many different ones and whatnot, and this just makes it way easier. Number 8, drop them off before it gets busy. Now, this is true in any city. When you're, let's say, going on a street that has tons of bars and tons of crazy clubs and whatnot, that street is always packed. For example, great example of this in Boston is Lansdowne Street. So many different bars. You have Lansdowne, you have Jillian's, like the bowling alley, you have Casting Flagon. You have all these different bars basically on that street. And to go from one end of the street to another, and I don't know how far the street is, maybe like a quarter of a mile, maybe at most, it can take you 20 minutes because there's so many different cars dropping people off and the traffic is brutal, right? And keep in mind, not only do you get paid less when you're sitting in that traffic just waiting to drop the people off, but let's say if you drop them off at the beginning of the street, you now basically have to just sit there and just wait for the traffic to go, right? So a big thing I would do is I'd always approach that street, whether it's Lansdowne Street or any other packed street, and I'd say to people in my car, like, hey, it's going to be crazy trying to drop people off at the street. I know it's going to be nuts right now. Is it okay if I drop you off in the beginning of the street? That way you guys can walk to the place and you might get there faster. Now, if it's really bad weather, or like say I have girls and they're wearing heels, or whatever the case is, a lot of times they might say no. But I would say most of the time, the people are like, you know what? That's a good point. We'll just be sitting in this traffic waiting to get dropped off. That works for me. And not only are they getting there faster, so it benefits them, it benefits you by not sitting in that traffic, just waiting to get out of it, so now you can pick up another person. Number 9 is squeeze the tomato. Now this is a very interesting one. I'm gonna say, do this at your own risk, but every Boston driver knows, and this is kind of the unspoken rule, when a light is yellow, it really means it's green. When a light is red, it means that you have 5 more seconds you can still go by. And when a light is green, you have to stop and wait for the people flying by the red light. And this is just the Boston culture. It's the way Boston drivers are, you know. So keep in mind, when you have different people in your car, try to gauge how they're going to react. And the reason why I say that is this, and I didn't expect this when I first started driving. I'd get people in the car who, let's say, were very, let's say college kids or they're very outgoing people, and I would stop at yellow lights, I would be very cautious when driving, and I actually got some negative ratings, or people being like, oh man, come on, you're gonna blow by that yellow light, you don't have to stop, and stuff like that, and actually got people getting mad for being almost too cautious. On the flip side, there's sometimes when I would drive by a yellow light, and some people in the car would be like, oh my god, you just went past that yellow light, like it could have turned red, and they got super cautious. Great example, I will say is another time, hence squeeze the tomato, is I was with these group of college kids, I was driving them, this is near the end of the night, and the light turned red, but I flew by, Boston culture, and they all started cheering, and they're like, yeah, you squeezed that tomato, and I was like, what? And apparently they said squeeze the tomato. I never knew this was a term, I guess. Squeeze the tomato was in Boston when obviously the light turns red, and we still have a couple more seconds to go by it, and I actually got a $10 tip from one of the kids being, yo man, you squeeze that tomato, here's the $10 tip, you were a great driver, Now, am I saying that every person is going to tip you $10 if you fly by red lights? No, But I will say that in Boston specifically, as opposed to any other city, I have noticed a very different culture change in terms of reacting to the way lights are, especially when you're a driver. And I've even had some people start to get mad at me, being like, hey man, you didn't have to stop at that yellow light, like don't try to make the ride longer and by increasing the fare or whatever the case is. I've gotten some people kind of getting the feeling like I was trying to like screw them over by making the ride longer, whatever the case is. So again, this very much so depends person to person, but I didn't want to mention it in this video because it's something that I did encounter a lot more than I expected. And lastly, number 10, which is the biggest moneymaker of them all, is snow. When it is bad weather, make sure you go out there. Now, obviously be safe, I want to stress, but as in terms of the correlation, the more worse the weather conditions, the way more money you're going to make. It's just the way it works. And in Boston, when it would snow and it'd be super bad, even if it was raining, whatever the case is, the surges would be through the roof. I remember, and this is actually when I first started driving, keep in mind, I think it was from 2014, 2015 is when Boston got that record period of snow, which was horrible. And streets were super crowded. It was insane. The surges were through the roof, and I was making, no joke, like $60 an hour pretty consistently. It was nuts, right? So keep in mind, just make sure that you have obviously a scraper in your car. I mean, you should have one anyway, you're in New England, but have like a scraper in your car. Have some type of method that when it snows and when it's really bad weather, you can quickly shovel out your car, you get your car up and running, and you're good to go right away. This is something I would prepare for, and if anything, get excited about, because for any Lyft and Uber driver, the best time to drive in Boston is hands down the winter, when it's really, really bad weather, when it's, blizzarding out and stuff like that. Be safe, but definitely get out on the road. Even if it's not like a surge period, even if it's like 1 p.m. in the afternoon, if it's snowing really bad, I promise you, there's probably going to be a surge rate, and you're probably going to make a lot of money. Not even counting the regular surge hours, like the commuting hours and going out and all that kind of stuff.